Hi, welcome to the Hawkzilla channel. As you can see, this is a very strange video, and it is sort of my feeling, kind of ghost-like, I guess. If you remember my last video, I was telling you that I had this really weird feeling, and so I asked God to show me, and He gave me both an open vision, and then when I went to sleep, He gave me a pretty harsh dream. I got to see the start of WW3. It was a ruse, beginning of it. North Korea did attack South Korea, and I did see it. It was like God took me up, and I saw it, and EMP blast, and there was no electricity, and then Seoul is gone. Most of the American troops stationed at the DMZ were annihilated with a nuclear weapon. South Korean's Navy was able to get a distance out, and they launched weapons, nuclear weapons, that the Americans had given them many years ago. And Pyongyang and a couple other places, military targets were hit. And that's what brought China in. And China waited like a couple days. The radiation was pretty bad. There was thousands of Koreans dead, Americans dead. Of course, the Americans were angry, so they also launched tactical nuclear strikes on North Korean military bases. Well, basically, North Korea it's already desolate, but there was probably a few people from my dream, it seemed like, that were living underground in North Korea, but it was bad. But it was a start of something so much worse. China used it as a front while it was going on. Their Navy and their Air Force and transportation was making its way through Hawaii and basically taking the islands of Hawaii. Some of their troops went south, and they attacked Australia and New Zealand with the help of the Indonesians, who seemed to help them. America, in my dream that I had last night, which was pretty vivid. I don't know, about 30 American cities, and almost all the West Coast major cities were hit with either small or major nuclear kiloton. Mushroom clouds just were seen up and down the coast. A couple of them had set off earthquakes, big earthquakes. The Cascadia Subduction Zone, the larger one in California. Parts of California were going into the ocean, but because it was on fire, what people were left were just helpless. The Chinese invaded the West Coast. The Russians invaded North and the East Coast, which the Russians, with their submarines, had tactically attacked. The Iranians, if you've been reading, the Iranians came with the Chinese in the invasion. Mexicans invaded from the south. They came with some Cubans, some some Venezuelan, and also Chinese troops too. It was a multinational effort, a coalition, a confederacy against the United States. It was hard for me to sleep. Things that I saw in my dream just were disgusting. Lots of dead bodies, the smell of death. I could smell death. I don't know if you've had a chance to, or if you've heard about it, but it's pretty horrible. Lots of dead people. Those that were alive, they were people that were still on fire, and these bullets that the United States government has been hoarding, they were left in specific areas. It was a collaborated effort between the Obama administration and his czars and people and his revolutionaries. They helped set it up so when our country was attacked, they were able to have unlimited ammunition, and we're talking ammunition to make sure that anything that they shot would die. That's what the hollow point bullets were for. The Americans helped the intruders find Americans, gun owners, so forth. Families, entire families were being taken out and shot. In my dream, I was disgusted. I was crying. Probably the worst part that just turned my stomach was the Iranian troops. They would go into a home. These were on the West Coast, and some of them were even in the interior, such as Wyoming and so forth. And they would go into a home after they've attacked the house. They would take the family and they would literally YouTube cutting the heads off of the entire family and sending it back, and it was being broadcast over most major networks, Arabic networks. It was disgusting. Obama was hiding, his people were hiding, and God let me see that Obama was just laughing. He is pure evil. I don't know if he's the Antichrist, but he's evil, and he has deals with the Russians and the Chinese. Everything he does is just for PR. And they were living under the ground, letting Americans die. Horrible deaths, burning. Some incinerated, most incinerated. Ones that weren't were either full of radiation sickness, burns, or still burning. Like I said, they were coming and just shooting the people. If you were sick, the troops would just come kill you. In my dream, I remember hearing that they thought maybe about 114 million Americans had maybe made it through, but they weren't too sure. A lot of them were hiding out, and of course, that's when the militias were trying to protect people, but it was just really hard. The Chinese and the Russians, Spetsnaz, and the one thing that really did scare me was seeing the Spetsnaz paratroopers coming out of planes being dropped. It was weird. It was like they were perfect in a row. They just drop. They were like, it's hard to explain, but it was like perfect. Just, and they were just falling. And there was troops already on the ground. There were troops on the ground helping them out. I mean, like they had been here before. There were whole cities were taken out. Other cities were being hurt. There was poisonings of the water. Electricity was pretty much cut off. Just scorched earth. It was hard to explain. Now, I can't say that I personally was there to experience, but I got to see it. And trust me, it is not something you want to see. There were reports that in Australia, in my dream, I remember hearing that the Chinese were raping the women and the New Zealand women and killing the men. The Chinese were literally just pure evil. So were the Russians. Americans must have had some resistance, but I didn't see any of that. I just saw that there wasn't many Americans. What if 315 plus Americans, 114 million make it? The war, in my dream, I saw India and Pakistan had gone after each other, and there wasn't much left there. Iran decided, with the help of Egypt and all the countries near there, Jordan and stuff, to attack Israel. And Israel had seen what had happened to the United States. And they basically just tactical nukes, battlefield nukes. They destroyed, Egypt almost barely didn't exist. Syria. It was a mess. Just horrible death. When they say that 1/3 of the earth, I would say billions of people died. Like I said, the smell of death was everywhere. The Israelis were winning, and nobody, and this is the thing that really in my dream, and I'm just going to say this, America was so bad off, but many countries would not let our Navy, Marines, or anybody else that was foreign based stay in their country. Our Navy couldn't port anywhere. The Europeans wouldn't let us do it. The Brits were already in knee deep and have been bombed so bad. France, there's just no place. And the only ones to allow the United States to let their Navy port, not even Puerto Rico was allowing, in their U.S. territory, our ships to port there. They were disallowing it. And so, as many as we could, I saw that Israelis wouldn't let American ports. They were putting Navy ships in, and Americans basically, I'm not saying they gave their sovereignty over to the Israelis, but there really wasn't a whole lot of America, and what was of America was underground. The Navy pretty much had turned, from what I gathered, the Navy, Marines, Army, a majority of them had turned against the particular administration. And the Israelis took them in, of course, and which was good. But it was it truly was. God is my witness. It was horrible. And now that I've seen a glimpse of what is soon to happen, I tell you right now, get to know Jesus Christ, your personal Savior. I don't know whether the rapture is going to happen now, or we're going to see all this, and we're going to somehow be protected through it. We may, but be rest assured there is a rapture. Be rest assured that Jesus is coming again, and have salvation, because
even more predictions were revealed on national radio. But this next event was more terrifying than many could have imagined.
I was flabbergasted by the data I got as a result of remote viewing the next X day in Tokyo, because this reactor problem, a reactor breaking, and what I said to the Japanese, I said, and on national radio in my country, this is going to be at least a mini Chernobyl, at least a mini Chernobyl. So again, what I said on national radio in my country, because the Japanese would not want to scare their citizens with this knowledge, was that Japan's going to experience, and when they experience this big earthquake, this next big earthquake, Tokyo will be okay, but this reactor problem will cause at least a mini Chernobyl.
But their breeder reactor is going to break, causing essentially another Chernobyl.
Ed, is that a double containment type reactor?
It is, but it doesn't matter.
How big an earthquake are you talking about?
We're talking about a pretty big earthquake. These reactors in Japan are designed to take earthquakes up to about 7.8 without even breaking.
Right.
And so we're talking about a real catastrophic earthquake, a very big shaker that does not do a lot of damage to Tokyo. We know, for instance, we believe, based upon our work, and have described this for the Japanese viewing audience, the large modern skyscrapers standing.
On March 11, 2011, this tragic prediction came to pass. A massive 8.9 earthquake struck off the coast of Japan, resulting in a tsunami that swept across the Japanese landscape, engulfing entire towns. Just as Ed Dames predicted, power plants were damaged, resulting in the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. As the world watched these predictions come to pass, the inevitable question followed: how much time do we have left until the kill shot is upon us?
The time problem is a big bugbear. We can see an event. I used to see loosely. We can perceive big events, all of these types of big events, in the future, just like one could see a big mountain range in the future. You can see it ahead, but we don't have the parallax, in terms of an analogy, we don't have the parallax vision to adjudge the distance to this big mountain. We can only guess it. There's a very similar situation we have in remote viewing. We can perceive these events ahead, but we can't adjudge the distance in time. So it's still a big problem for us. That's why we had to go through this nut roll about looking at the preceding events that lead up to this huge catastrophic disaster on Earth. When is this going to happen? Because that's the big one. That's the big question. When is it going to happen? So much time has been dedicated by remote viewers, my team and others, individuals, to attempt to discern this. And again, since mind is outside of time, we cannot put a calendrical date on the beginning of this sequence. But what we've done over the years is establish preceding events, large, recognizable preceding events that lead up, that we can see, are dominoes that lead up to the beginning of this kill shot sequence.
Many of these preceding events have already come to pass, including the shot across the bow, the killer crop fungus, and the Japanese disaster. But what else do viewers foresee coming over the horizon?
We picked up the use of a nuclear weapon on the Korean Peninsula by the North Koreans, and this event would be one of the last events that humans recognize before the kill shot sequence begins. We haven't seen that yet.
This prediction was revealed years ago to the public on the Coast to Coast AM radio show. At the time, the nation had zero nuclear capability, and the notion that they would use a nuclear weapon as an act of war was widely believed to be absurd.
As time went on, the idea and the first nuclear test happened in North Korea. That got the attention of a lot of people who had heard my prediction, saying, "Uh-oh, I hope he's not right. That was just a test." But they are certainly developing. And we know now, we have remote viewed the fact that they're developing at least atomic mines, underwater mines, against U.S. subs. We know that as remote viewers. And we know that they're going to pop a nuke in anger because that event was so big. It's not a little epiphenomenon like a baseball game or something like that. It's a big event in history. We're not prophets. We're not prophesying. We're just using remote viewing to look that way in a particular direction at the particular topic. And And it's just like turning your telescope onto and focusing it onto a particular target and studying it. That's what we do. We choose the targets.
The North Korean prediction appears capable of coming to pass any year now. But there is another event that remote viewers fear the most, a sign that the kill shot is imminent.
What would be that final recognizable event just prior to the kill shot sequence? The best that we could come up with, pushing ahead, the best that we could come up with was what appeared to be a space shuttle being forced down by what appears to be a meteor shower or something like that. For those of you who are not remote viewers, let me give you a little bit of insight into what remote viewing is in terms of a skill set. Most of the information that we derive from a target is in terms of word idea concepts, patterns of information that we perceive and turn into search our memory for words and apply those words, a written word on a piece of paper, and move on. The information we had that led us to believe that we're dealing with a space shuttle as a final precursor event to space shuttle coming down, as a final precursor event to the kill shot, was a collection of those rough sketches. So analytically, we're saying it looks like the space shuttle coming down.
In 2006, I had a dream. I never recorded the dream, but it was real as any awake experience. I've learnt over the years that when I have a dream that leaves an impression upon my mind, feelings, I should take it seriously. I do not have these dreams too often, but when I do, they materialize into the reality of the real world sometime in the future. In my dream, I saw Daegu, a city of about 4 million, south of the capital Seoul, reduced to rubble. There was not a building standing, and the devastation was complete. In the dream, I was working with some US military friends of mine, and we were loading trucks with food and supplies from the military storehouses. At the time, I was working as an English teacher in South Korea. I had no idea of the threat of North Korea. When I started telling my colleagues about the dream, they told me that Kim Jong-il was doing missile tests. For several weeks, I told friends at work and church about the dream. There was not a soul that could convince me that it would not happen. I was so convincing that my boss at the time, who was in the process of building a new school, believed me. He had the builders make the walls 2 times the normal thickness. He is working from that school at this present time. I had another friend in the military, and he in fact was in charge of the missile defense systems in South Korea. I asked him if North Korea shot hundreds of missiles at South Korea, could the defense system shoot them down, and he said no. He said they would be too low and it would be impossible to shoot them all down. It's easy to shoot one missile down, but dozens or hundreds would be impossible. At this present time, 2012, March 25th, US, Japan and South Korea have formed an alliance in that area against North Korea. North Korea is planning a missile launch next month that is highly suspicious. It would not take much to spark an incident or even a full conflict. I do believe that the time will come when the destruction of cities in South Korea will be fulfilled, as I saw in my dream. Whether the time is soon or later, I do not know. But this is a good time to keep an eye on what is happening in North and South Korea and Japan.
The WW3 rocket will take off from a new launch site in North Korea's west.
Pretty harsh dream. I got to see the start of World War III. It was a ruse, beginning of it. North Korea did attack South Korea, and I did see it. It was like God took me up. I saw it, and EMP blast, and there was no electricity, and then Seoul is gone. Most of the American troops stationed at the DMZ were annihilated with a nuclear weapon. South Koreans Navy was able to get a distance out, and they launched weapons, nuclear weapons that the Americans had given them many years ago. And Pyongyang and a couple other places, military targets were hit. And that's what brought China. It seemed like they were living underground in North Korea, but it was bad. But it was a start of something so much worse. China used it as a front while it was going on. Their Navy and their Air Force and transportation was making its way through Hawaii and basically taking the islands of Hawaii. Some of their troops went south, and they attacked Australia and New Zealand with the help of the Indian. Hi, welcome to the Hawkzilla channel. As you can see, this is a very strange video, and it is sort of my feeling, kind of ghost-like, I guess. If you remember my last video, I was telling you that I had this really weird feeling, and so I asked God to show me, and He gave me both an open vision, and then when I went to sleep, He gave me a and China. Waited like a couple days. The radiation was pretty bad. There was thousands of Koreans dead, Americans dead. Of course, the Americans were angry, so they also launched tactical nuclear strikes on North Korean military bases. Well, basically, North Korea it's already desolate, but there was probably a few people from my dream